It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. And once again, we are back doing a podcast. Say hello, gentlemen. Introduce yourselves.
Oh, hey, I am Chad Jetner. I'm sorry. I'm used to going like second or third or something.
That's all right, Chad. I'm Peter Lawrence, and welcome back, Kyle.
Thank you. It was gone for a week. It was a good vacation. Had a good time. I'm Kyle Bacher, and today we're talking about the subtle art of not giving. Can't even say it. Thank you, Chad.
I'll say it for you, Kyle.
I'm such a do-gooder, man.
Hey, you
killing
are.
me. Yeah.
But specifically, the book, how we can apply some of that to consulting, and I'm keeping a tally here of how many times our good friend Emily is going to have to use the bleep button.
Are you writing down the timestamps?
No.
Excellent. No. So the book is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving Up, and it's written by Mark Manson. Is it 20 years old yet? 15?
No. Is it that old?
I don't.
It's not that old, is it? Wow.
I don't know. I feel like it was a long time ago.
No, I feel like I'm old.
Her. So,
Chad will
that's
help us out.
twice. 2 bleeps.
Yeah, I don't have.
There's an asterisk though. It's not on the cover. Yeah. So, basically, letting go, not caring. It's sort of a negative, counterintuitive advice. It goes against the conventional wisdom.
Well, especially as consultants, where you're coming in to jump in and help, right? And they're looking to you for expertise, and we've talked about that. Like, okay, everybody's looking at you as the expert, so you need to project strength, project ownership, take over, all of that. And sometimes that doesn't work.
Yeah. And I think, it's been a while since I read it, but he also talks about how, like, the pursuit of a perfect life is only kind of reinforces the fact that you don't have one. So
right.
Stop trying, right?
Yeah.
And take care of what's in front of you. And that's a huge thing as far as what we do, right? Like, and it applies to a lot of what we do, right? Like, don't try to write perfect code. Even like silly little minutia, right? Like, me and Peter talked about this before. Don't go for 100% code coverage. Don't go for 100% of everything. Don't go for perfection. Go for what's going to work. And go for kind of the agile manifesto, right? Working software is the truest sign of progress.
Right.
I think that, as I look back on my consulting career that I used to have, like starting out, I made every mistake possible, every blunder. And I think one of them was that striving for perfection and thinking that you have to get it perfect. And that's just the emotional cost of that, and getting hung up on tiny details. There's a cost, but good enough, or just good, or really good, excellent, those things are not perfect.
They're never perfect,
but they work.
100%. And I've heard this, and I've hung on to it really tightly, is that perfection is the enemy of the good, right? So if you want good software, do not seek perfection. You'll never get there. And I don't know that that's something that they teach in programming classes or anything like that. Like, they sort of want you to get their answer sometimes. And so going and consulting, sometimes you're like, well, you need to get my answer. But eventually you learn that There are 1,000 ways to do things in software, and 999 of them are probably just fine. There's some bad things that you shouldn't do, obviously, but we've all done those too. And if they work, by golly, sometimes that's just good enough.
Yeah.
Because, it worked great for 10 people, might not work for 200,000, but I only have to support 3, so I'm done.
And one of the things that the fella gets about in the book is he's a little more eloquent about it, but it's really just like, don't worry about the unimportant things, right? Like, it's basically don't sweat the small stuff, but with swear words and a lot of colorful language around it. But he's basically said, like, don't worry about literally everything, right? Worry about, shed the unimportant things, worry about what matters, which is kind of hard sometimes, especially for me. It's almost like I kind of have to worry about literally everything. But then you get rid of all that. And then you stop and you're like, okay, what really matters?
Right.
Is my project team happy? Are they happy? Do we think we're doing meaningful work? Is everybody having is everybody satisfied with what they're doing? And if they are, great. And can we, that's the things that matter to me. I mean, obviously customer goals, right? We got a project we need to deliver. We've got software we need to write. But can we be, most importantly, taking care of ourselves as we're doing that? That's a huge part of it. And I try to apply that's the thing that's important to me. And that's where I kind of go against the book. Like, I care about that. Well, then
goal numero uno is make that happen.
But what you can do is you can say, well, I'm going to follow the book after work and not take this home and think about it and lose sleep over it. It's like I gave it enough worrying time during the day. Nothing's going to change over the weekend. Nothing's going to change. I might have some kind of thought or inspiration or something, but leaving work at work.
I have trouble with that. I've actually considered figuring out a way to bill for when I'm sleeping, because I have lately, this has happened a lot, and I'm mostly joking here, but like really last week, I went to bed while I was working, right? I had my laptop on in my bed, and I was like knocked off and set my laptop aside, fell asleep. I was trying to solve a weird build problem that we were having. Fell asleep, started dreaming about the build problem, solved it in my sleep, woke up, grabbed the laptop that was sitting on the floor right next to me, like, oh, that worked, right? Now, is that indeterminate amount of time billable? Probably not. But boy, gosh darn it, if I could just leave the work problems at work, or at the very least leave them in my conscious waking state, I'd be super happy.
Yeah, I try not to problem solve in the afternoons.
What do you do in the afternoon?
Usually I'm tired, unless I for some reason break all the permissions on our intranet site. Then I have to scramble.
Then you'll problem solve in the afternoon.
Mondays, what are you going to do? So first step, admit you done wrong. Second step, fix it. Yeah. But that's a good example. It's like, yeah, I messed that up. And I fixed it. And like, do I carry that shame around now for months? And
we can't see it on the shelf behind you. It's not there. That's not the shame.
That's not the shame. Yeah. I'm like, well, things happen. I think they changed something and I wasn't expecting it. And yeah, it couldn't have been my fault.
No.
But the letting go, the not, getting all bent out of shape, not the shame. But around problem solving, like I have spent hours in the afternoon into the evening trying to figure stuff out, only to wake up with the answer.
The next morning. Yeah.
Yep.
In your dream, did you dream about the problem and solve it in the morning?
I don't know. I don't remember many of my dreams.
Oh,
I just assumed that I solved it in the morning, and then it passed it off to the conscious mind, and then it picked up on the answer from the subconscious dream state. But I'm not a very lucid dreamer normally either. And I normally don't conflate work and everything else, right? There's usually a pretty good separation, although
okay.
there are times.
Yeah, I've had so many of those times recently. I mean, so many.
Is it deadline related, do you think?
Oh
Or
gosh, yeah, yeah, probably maybe a little bit of that. A little bit, just the size of the problem we're solving. There's a lot of it that's going into it, and a lot of probably unresolved stress um, that I'm carrying into bedtime with me. But I do actually get a little bit of joy out of solving problems, right? Like
oh, yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
huge amount that I get from that, more so than avoiding them. So I think that's in the book. That's chapter whatever, I forgot. Uh,
No avoiding problems?
Not avoiding problems. You can find some happiness by solving your own problems.
I find happiness solving my own problems and then also solving other people's problems and helping other people. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in this job. I wouldn't have made it this far
Right.
if I didn't get some enjoyment out of that. And then doing other stuff that I think people are going to like. But that's the stuff I like lose sleep over. The editing a large video that we got to send out and that hundreds of people are going to watch. Like,
Yeah.
that's a lot of pressure. And I can't, that's when the book goes out the window. There's no way I'm going to follow any of that. I'm going to sit there and sweat it out until I get some feedback and, think, okay, I did it. Yeah, I accomplished my goal. But time pressure is not good. If you have a sense of urgency and you care about things and you have empathy for the customer and you want to do well,
Right.
it's hard to shut it off. It's hard not to care. And then during work, like this, decisions have to be made. Things have to be chosen. Peter, you have a good rule about.
I do have a good rule. I don't know that it's my rule, but it's certainly one that I've heard and latched onto as well.
So when you
want me
have
to
an
state the
idea,
rule?
Yeah,
Sure.
I'll set it up. You have an idea or something you're pitching that you think you should do or use.
Right.
And so you need to get the okay.
Right.
And
You're at a client. You can't you have no ownership over this stuff. So you have to convince others that they need to do the thing that you saw on the internet or saw at a conference and thought it was really cool and we should do this, or, or have learned through years and years and years and years and years of software development that that's a bad thing to do the way that we're doing it right now and we should do it differently. And so you approach the people in charge of making those decisions and saying yes, and you say, I'm going to lay this out and I do my best job. Here's all the pluses, the pros, the cons, the features, the benefits, all the magic buzzwords I can think of. I put it out there and they say no. And you're like, all right, well, that was fun. That was not how I expected. And when I rehearsed this in my head, you said yes, and let's start right now. Why haven't we started already? And so, it's good to let it sit for a few days or a week or, a little bit longer, let it go for a little bit, but then come back to it and just say, wanted to try one more time. Just I've gathered a little bit more information. I've got some more details from your particular situation, and I think we should do this. And they say no. And all you can do at that point is to say, fine, that's wonderful. Let's carry on the way we're going. I've often referred to it as explaining that a bus is coming and you're standing in the middle of the road, right? And like, I see the bus. I have experience. I know what the bus looks like. It's coming. I know that the person or team is in the middle of the road, and I try to explain that it's going to cause damage at some point. And they're like, "Yep, we know." And it's like, "Okay, I will let you stand in the road, but I will prepare for all of the things that happen after the bus hits. I will call the ambulance. I will get people going. I will slow down the bus as much as I could possibly can, that kind of thing."
I feel like this has taken a dark turn.
It is kind of a dark turn, but it's a dramatic thing, right? Like, you can
Yeah.
see I mean, tech debt is real, right? And if you're
Yeah.
building tech debt into your project, these people are going to be mad at you 2 years down the road. They're going to curse you and say, "Why didn't you stop us?" And it's like, well, here's where I tried to.
Right.
Does that help though? I mean, pointing out like,
No. You're not going to throw it back in their face or anything like that.
Right.
You always say, well, we did our best. We made our best decisions. We chose to do this, as a team. So let's carry on and go forward, right?
yeah, I've had to consciously like physically like clench my fists when situations like those arise, because it's never helpful to say,
No.
remember like 3 months ago when we talked about
Right.
this? Okay, cool, I remember.
Yeah.
And now what? We're still here, right? You
I
pointing
told you
out
so
that you were
never
right
wins
about it.
anything.
Yeah, exactly. It never, and it actually makes you, it makes things worse. I mean, I think the intent of saying that is it builds up a little bit of credibility for yourself the next time you say things.
Right.
But boy, dunking on people, while cathartic, is never productive, really.
Yeah. Like, no is not necessarily the end. So when the first no I get is, I feel like I take that on. It's on me. I wasn't clear. I didn't do my homework enough. I didn't understand the situation well enough. So I'm going to try to do all that. And then the next time I talk about it, have all that additional information. And, um, and then if the second no comes, then that's on them. And it's like, I feel like I did my level best to get the point across. There's some stuff where you absolutely know that it is the wrong thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the tough ones.
But you've seen it, and you just know, yes, we're making a mistake. We're going to try to do. I will try to steer a little bit off to the side, so we, or put some guardrails up so that we don't have as big a problem, in the future. But yeah, those hurt. But like I said earlier, there's 1,000 different ways to write software.
Yeah.
And 999 of them are probably correct for some situation.
That is optimistic. Your success rate is a little high, I think, there, Peter, but I don't really care about the actual answer. But yeah, I mean, it's getting back to like, kind of the topic here and how we can apply it to consulting. And once again, the topic is the subtle art of not giving a fuck.
You're just putting Emily to work on purpose now.
Yeah,
now it's a game.
Yeah. It's for me, like, most of what we write, most of the code we write, most of the projects we write only exist in the world for, what would you say the average lifespan is, Peter? 5 to 10 years?
I would hope 5 years, but I've seen longer.
Yeah. Right. Like, well, and so have I, right? Like, I've seen things last for a generation, like a human generation.
Yes.
And fighting every single battle and trying to win every single argument for something that's only going to live, I mean, for 5 years, is just going to make you a miserable person, right? Like, because you're not going to win every argument, probably. And even if you do, then what? Right? Oh,
Oh,
congratulations. We're going to
right.
follow this pattern instead of this pattern. To your point, Peter, both of them probably equally valid. You won the argument. You won another argument. Well, now you just look kind of like um,
A non-consultant.
a non-consultant. I was trying to think of an adjective that wouldn't make Emily use the bleep button, but
You just look obstinate, like you're set in your ways, and you got to have it your way, or you're not willing to compromise, right?
that's
The
part of
problem
it.
with being right, that drive to be right. Sorry, Chad, I think I interrupted you.
Yeah, but like that's my point, though, right? Like I'll make an argument for something, and like to Peter's point, maybe you see the bus coming, and then you get hit by the bus sometimes.
Yeah.
But being right isn't much of a reward for me, right?
No.
Like there's a common goal, there's 1,000 different ways to get there, and there's hundreds of ways to get there with your sanity and your happiness intact.
And you guys have heard the phrase "keeping your powder dry"?
No, what?
No. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Is that
maybe
like
it's
an old rifle thing?
no. It's sort of I'm going to save my ammunition for when it really counts.
Oh,
Like
there's a
I
way.
don't think that this argument is worth spending all of my consultant capital on. This is not that argument right now. So I'm going to keep my powder dry. I'm going to save it for later, just in case I need to have a and spend that capital at some point, right?
Well, and also the powder doesn't work if it's wet.
Well, that's why you keep it dry, so that it's
That's
ready to go.
Cool, dry place. That's right.
That's the point of the metaphor.
Yes.
So another part of that book is the problem with like happiness.
Oh, happiness sucks.
All right, I got to hear more about
The
that.
idea that you're supposed to be happy all the time, you need to achieve happiness and be in a state of happiness and do things that make you happy. And it's like, actually, if you had discipline to do things that didn't make you happy because they're the right thing to do, then maybe your kitchen would be clean and you wouldn't have a mice problem. So I'm not speaking from experience.
I think if you don't keep your kitchen clean, you may get a mice problem. But
okay.
you're
sorry, go ahead, Peter.
No, Chad, take it away.
I was it's okay for things to suck, right? Like that's an absolutely okay thing. And like for us, right, and probably maybe safe to say it for a lot of our listeners, the everything that we call like a life problem is really just kind of a side effect of not having actual problems to worry about, right? Like we are healthy for the most part. We're, we can support ourselves. We're well fed. I mean, I just downed an entire bag of Flamin' Hot Cheetos. So our problems aren't really problems. They're just things we invent and stress out
You're
about.
saying if your right hand were on fire, you might forget about the argument about which software package to use for this thing, right?
Or like as a Java developer, do I want to start a project as a Gradle project or Maven, right? Like that's not really a problem. That's a choice we get to make.
Yeah.
It's not a problem at all. Our problems aren't important, really.
No, and like sometimes it's just the priming of the pump is, I get over that early bit of suffering to make something better. So it's worth it. Like swimming in cold water. If you love to swim, you'll get used to the water, but you gotta go through that initial moment of pain and suffering.
And there's not really any value in suffering if there's no point to it, right? Like,
right.
There's value in suffering a little bit if there's a goal at the end of the rainbow, right? But just being miserable for the sake of being miserable.
Yeah, I got really good at suffering.
Yeah. Like that. I'm only up to 4 so far. We can do better.
That's pretty good.
Just a tirade of cursing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the suffering, taking on that stuff, not always having to be happy, imperfection, embracing imperfection and failure and things like that as a part of the road to get to the success, I think is also important. I think there's a chapter in the book about it, about failure. And if you really see it as true failure, like where it's you that's the problem. You messed up.
What did Edison say? He failed 99 times, and then the 100th time he got the light bulb right. I forget the exact quote.
He said
numbers.
He said he didn't fail. He said he learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think that's the exact quote, but I'm not going to look it up. I'm gonna let.
No, I'm
let it just hang out
that
there.
I'm right, so don't bother looking it up.
I'm not looking it up.
Hey,
since we're pausing here,
are we giving a?
I want to
pull
up
here.
So you are not special. Is another chunk of
it felt like
chapter.
It felt like Kyle looked right at me and said, "You are not special, Chad."
Like he was looking at me. I could tell.
You are special, Chad.
Okay.
He looked right in the camera.
Peter, I think you're more special. To me, anyway.
Yeah.
I think the point that he makes, and this is applicable to us too, is that, I mean, you're probably average at a lot of things. And if you're mildly above average at a couple of things, then you probably suck really bad at a couple other things. And that's actually kind of good to just kind of accept, right? Is that you're probably pretty average most of the time. And just get comfortable in that.
Yeah. Every new thing you start, you're going to suck at. If you have like unnatural built-in talent, you're going to suck less at it. You're going to get a little of a head start. But yeah, if you don't get through that period, you won't keep doing it. You'll quit.
Right. And nobody starts out a virtuoso, an expert, anything like that. Right. Picasso's first drawing probably was not beautiful.
Actually, I would say Picasso's first and last drawings probably looked very close to each other because things got weird fast.
But
he got better at it.
Probably sold better than his other stuff because it was his first drawing. Yeah. So the "you are not special" thing, that can kind of cause that I need to be right, or cause that, you need to listen to me more than 2 times because I'm the expert. I am the special one. And and that's tough with consulting is, you're really never the expert in a complete expert in anything. There's always new things. There's always things you don't know. And some things you just haven't worked with before. Parts of it you had just never done in your project.
Right. One would hope, because you want to keep doing new things. That is part of the exciting part about being a consultant, right? Is you get to work on different things. I have gotten to the point where I've been very successful at clients and gotten to the point where I know exactly which line of code to change without even bringing up an editor. Really? And then I move and I switch clients. I mean, but I know exactly, like, I know I have to scroll down about 2/3 of the way, and it's right here, and that's the code I need to change for this.
Yeah.
Right. Because I've gone through the code dozens of times. I started out of the client with the blank editor, which the bane of my existence is the blank editor.
It's something where you could be on your phone, on a flip phone at a ball game.
Yes.
And run out to take a call in the parking lot and basically talk someone through the whole thing to fix it.
Right.
You're that
Easily.
familiar with it.
Yes.
Another part of the book is the importance of saying no, which this is like, I am so bad at saying no because I'm a people pleaser and I want to help people. So I will say yes. Sure, I can build a fake LinkedIn feed that's a mile long. Yeah, right. I can do that.
Why not?
It took
Who
a
wouldn't
week,
do that?
But
it's a lot of typing.
Funny. Yeah. Yeah, there's a challenge aspect of it. There's it's your job to help people out, to say yes. But, it's your job to say yes and help people out. It's not your job to say, yes, I can have this done in 5 minutes.
Yeah, we've certainly talked about that.
Important task.
Right. And prioritizing and getting that feedback, right? Like, I can say yes to that, but I will have to say no to these other things. And I have to check with someone who cares about that before I can say yes.
Yeah.
And it's always, I will say no to that, but I'll check to see if I should say yes. Rather than I will say yes and find out if I can't do it later on. No is much better.
I say yes to everything. I'm sorry, I skimmed that chapter at best. It is.
Yeah. You were like, that one's not for me.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody's going to find this useful, but it does. No, I mean, it's difficult depending on what role you have as a consultant at a place, right? Like,
right.
There's roles that you really can't say no to a lot of things, right? You've got a list of problems in front of you. You've got to find solutions to all of those problems, or you got to, redirect those problems to people that are more equipped to handle them. And so essentially, I mean, you're still saying yes.
Or decide that problem, you know what? I could solve that problem, but neither one of us wants me to spend the amount of time that it will take to solve that problem for the low benefit that we're going to get out of having that fixed.
Yeah, like we do that juice versus squeeze math all the time. And but we have to, at the very least, do that equation for folks quite a bit. And we have to honestly represent some of these things.
100%.
Sometimes walk, let's just take a little journey down what this really means, right?
Let me just explain to you what moving that button over means.
Yeah. So is 40 hours of my work, more important than 5 minutes of yours this year?
Well, we do that quite a bit, right? Like we try to really capture, and somebody actually put this is a big thing that I used to do when I used to be at a command line constantly is, should this be a shell script? Should I script this or not, right? And somebody actually had a little, like, if this saves you 5 minutes a day and it takes you 6 hours to write, here's when you actually realize, time saving.
Break even cost, right?
Yeah, the problem frequency, the time saved versus the time it takes to all that stuff.
That's funny that you mentioned that, Chad, when you talk about just you personally saying no to yourself, right? Like, I can write a program to do this, because we can all write programs to do this, whatever this is. Okay, low code, but
yeah, I'm much more apt to say no to myself than I am to somebody that wants something. No,
But
that's not necessarily true. I say yes to a lot of grain belts. Um,
I think the negotiating, like saying yes, but I'm saying no to your direct request, but I'll say yes with some caveats. I'll say yes with a longer time frame, things like that.
I mean, an MVP project is nothing but no's over and over, right? These are the no's. Everything I've said no to everything that I can live without.
well, and
It'll
that's
still work. Yeah.
yeah. I just the acronym MVP, like usually isn't, you know,
It's the most
baseball
valuable
MVP,
player.
yeah, is an absolute superstar. MVPs that we deliver are usually not, right? Like they're
Right.
minimally
Minimal
product.
viable.
but
Minimal.
they are, I mean, they are a start.
Right.
Kind
You go in and it's Christmas morning. It's just a cornucopia of features and awesomeness, and
and we
but
get
it's
to a certain point and it's not Christmas anymore. And I've actually, I mean, we have this discussion quite a bit about, well, can't we just change that? I mean, we could have 6 months ago, 9 months ago. I mean, we still can, but we have to change two things. We have to change that. Along with that, we also get to renegotiate when we're delivering our MVP thing. That
yeah.
is a whole
It's a
nother wave and a whole nother ocean.
it's a Christmas gift. You're excited about it. You open it, and it's an IKEA thing that will take you a week to set up, and that's really not a gift after all.
It's a project.
It is, but it's like okay, you start cutting away the fat or the phase two, you parking lot items, you throw it in the backlog, and you get yourself into a place where you're going to be building a minimum viable product with a promise of future capabilities if they decide to. And
Right.
that's can be a negotiation as well. Because if people don't like when you take things away. So you're usually going to get a little resistance.
Especially if you're doing a replacement project and they had, well, I have this 20-year mature project that's had changes made to it every single week for the last 20 years, and now it's doing exactly what I want, albeit really slowly and painfully, and it doesn't quite do it. But I've gotten used to working around these issues and these other issues, and downstream they have to do this whole other thing. It's just like you're telling me that it doesn't work, but that you've learned to live with it. Just say no.
You're in my head, dude. Like that's 1,000% of a lot of like, sure, we'd be more than happy to modernize this process, this project, whatever that you've been using forever. Got to understand though, using forever means, I can't even count the thousands of hours that went into
Right.
building that.
Right.
And to say, hey, I want you to do this in that, in a year, can just replace it. That is all your requirements. Do that here now. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's fun. Um, but it's challenging.
Well,
And
and because you have to say no along the way, right? And you're going to have to say no.
yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard. No is a hard. Nobody wants to hear the no
It's yeah.
or the yes and.
Well, mine is always that's what I do. Yeah. Mine's like absolutely 100% of the time now it's absolutely. It moves things back a little bit, but yeah, we'll
Right.
absolutely do that.
That
Right.
will only delay us an entire year of our
We're no
1-year
longer
project.
yeah, we're no longer at the wishes and shooting stars phase of the project. We are at the, here's your list and you're starting to take things off.
Right.
And if there is like extra stuff in there that they just wouldn't let go of, when you get closer to the deadline and pressure and, dwindling budget, things like that, then maybe that's the time to revisit some of those things and go, well, if we chuck this part for now, then we can meet this initial deadline, and then we can start planning for phase 2 and how we're going to get that done. But this is a really good starting point.
All deadlines are just kind of artificial anyway, right? Like,
yeah, you have to have some kind of goal to shoot for. People are given too much time. They might not work quite as fast. I don't know. There's something about filling a vacuum. And I've seen projects that go super slow planning, big planning phase, and then it's just a mad scramble. And it's like, well, what if we just had a mad scramble now? Could we do it?
Scramble, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, part of the reason that Agile exists, right, is that people knew and learned that they were very, very bad at figuring out the answer, looking far into the future. What's the answer? 42. Okay, now what? Go, right? Like, oh, well, we're going to build a bigger computer to tell us what the question was, right? For those of you.
After
Douglas
2
Adams
hours
fans.
of conversations, I'm going to do the best absolute job I can at figuring out what to put in this giant statement of work.
Right.
And, but I don't know if any reasonable person could expect that to be like perfect.
And if nothing changes,
right.
Absolutely nothing. All my assumptions were perfectly correct.
Mm-hmm.
We could get it done in that time.
Yes.
I equate it to NFL seasons frequently, right? Like, depending on where we are in the project, is wherever you are in that season, are we at the point where we can still lose a game or two? Or are we already, 4 games out and we've literally got to win every single game to have a chance at making the playoffs?
If we win every single game and these other teams all fall in line and lose and win correctly, we're in the playoffs.
And that was the analogy of the day. Thank you, Chad.
I love it.
Yeah, it was awesome. Okay, I got a question for Chad because you're project lead and you've been a leader for a long time. You're always choosing. That's from the book. Do you get decision fatigue?
No, not really. I do get. I don't really get fatigue around the decisions, or even like I'm not even stressed really about making the wrong decision. I just want to know that I've made the wrong decision as soon as I possibly can, so that we can, figure out what's right fast. So that's it. Like, I'm not really stressed about making a ton of choices throughout the life of a project. I just want to know really, really quickly, as quickly as possible, if I've made the wrong one, right? Like Peter and I and you, Kyle, we've probably all designed relatively complex, tightly coupled architectures, right? Like,
right.
If you find out, you start the project, if you find out a couple of years in that you've made a fundamental mistake in that design, you're you're not going to have a nice time. So I don't really get tired of the decisions. I just want to find the wrong ideas fast. I want to make 2,000
fail fast, right?
Bad light bulbs, or 2,000 non-functional light bulbs,
right? You want to start installing the light bulbs and turning the switch on after the first light bulb, not after you've already installed 2,000 burned out light bulbs.
The only part that stresses me out, Kyle, is I don't want to make a decision and then have somebody ask me a month later about that same type of problem and contradict last month, Chad, with a different answer. Like, that happens occasionally, right? Like, we're all not even realizing that this is the same problem, but like give a different answer depending on a different context. I'm like, oh shoot, that's right. Somebody will bring up, well, last month you said this. I'm like, you're right. We'll figure it out. That stresses me out. I never want to contradict myself as best I can.
I disagree. I think you're wrong there. And
What?
Yeah, that's right.
Really?
Yep, 100%.
Nice.
There are so many times that I've gone back and looked at old code that I've coded from 2 years before, and I've learned 2 years worth of things. And that 2-year-old decision, while right for where I was at the time, is wrong now. And I know it's wrong. And I know it's wrong because of the 2 years that have passed.
Yeah. I think that in that instance, having like, now you're an experienced developer working with an inexperienced developer's code, and it's the same guy. I think you can disagree with Chad on that point, but
Right.
I think Chad's also right.
Yeah,
agreed.
And I think I might have, like what you described, Peter. I agree with that, right? Like learning from code that I wrote 2 years ago. Yeah, that's not a thing I'm worried about. I'm more thinking like, I'll get asked what kind of pattern should I apply for this specific business requirement, or given this requirement, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. I'm like, okay, cool. And then couple months down the road, somebody asking me about a very similar requirement in a very similar context and giving the opposite answer, right?
Right.
That's the stuff that I really stress about, not necessarily not necessarily writing bad code. I do that day in and day out, like all day long. I'll write horrible stuff.
Well, isn't like, if you fly through and write bad code, it's almost like you're writing out the pseudocode and you're getting it all out there. So all your logic's figured out and all of that. And then the details of debugging and all of that.
Well, and that's actually one of the things that the fellow writes about in the book, and not to make this an entire book report, but I think one of the points he tries to get across is like, just go, right? Like start, move forward somehow. That's right. And that's what I think what you're talking about, Kyle, is like start writing.
Yeah.
Code, right. Even if it's pseudocode, even if it's whatever, just go and stop.
Emily alert.
Doing anything.
I mean, it's the enemy of the blank page, right? The writer's challenge of blank page, right?
Yeah.
Even having it was a dark and stormy night is a better start than a clean white sheet of paper to try to come up with that.
Well, and he even said, as a writer, just write 200 bad words. I remember that specific thing in one of his chapters. Like, start writing 200 bad things, and then maybe at the end of the day, you've got a good sentence or two or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. There was an article in the New Yorker, and it was one of the writers for The Simpsons, and like early on, one of the writers, and he said something similar, where it's like, it's writing something sucks, but fixing it is more fun. So get it out, write it out, start to finish, and then go back and make your changes and improvements. I used to start at the top of a how-to document and write it all the way to the bottom of the page, just like the recommendation. But early on, I thought I was done and didn't have to go back and do all that stuff. And then I find that, they don't understand it, or I forgot something, or so it's like, okay, I need to go over this multiple times, and I'm not done until like it's done. I got to go through that process. I'm not done just because I made it to the bottom of the page.
Right. And just because the function returns doesn't mean that you've done everything that you need to do. All the error handling. No, you don't start with a try catch block. I don't. I tend not to anyway. I tend to put those in after I get it working. Yeah.
Try catch block. What? Remember, I worked with SharePoint.
That's where you try to code something and then you catch the errors if they happen.
Okay.
Oh, is there a coding paradigm for that, Peter? That
Yeah.
try, catch, fail. Hey, I don't know.
If only he knew. Back to fail your way forward. My final point is, because this really is a book about self-care. You're
Right.
doing all this stuff to take care of yourself, and while happiness is a problem, like, doing these things may make you happier. But what if the way I look at it now is, how would I react if somebody else failed? How would I treat them? And I'm like, well, I'm a, nice, albeit sarcastic and, individual. And I would, help them up, dust them off, say, get back in there, Tiger, get back in the fight. You can do this.
Right.
But for me, it's like, I'm toast. I'm done. I'm horrible. Like, so treating, I think, other people like, treating yourself like you do other people.
Right. That's important.
Is important. That's my final thought.
I dunk on people all the time. I mean, if somebody makes a mistake, I mean, it's like that iconic picture of Muhammad Ali when he knocked that guy out. I'm just over there like, look at you.
Come on. How dare you fail?
I know. Wait,
I'm guessing
Kyle just subtly threw a final thought in there before officially calling for final thoughts.
Well, I thought that would be a way of calling for final thoughts, but do you have any?
A couple. One, I'm not usually a self-help book guy. I was a little pissed off when I picked this book up and it turned out to be a self-help book. I just thought it was a cool looking book with a swear word on the cover.
Yeah.
And then I started reading it. I'm like, oh, gosh darn it. Kind of like this one.
Yeah.
But final thought. I don't know. It's mostly small stuff. Don't care too much about it. No, wait, let's scratch that. That's bad. That's cheesy as.
Tell you what, I'll go first, and then you can come in after me. My final thought is that even though I say that I let everything go, there are times where I get up at 4 a.m. and worry about things. But the difference is that I've gotten better at going back to sleep over time rather than staying up every single time. And so sometimes you just have to not give a pedal of the book.
Come on.
And not give a and let things go.
Peter.
Yeah.
From the top rope.
and let things go, because they really, you look back, what was I worrying about 2 years ago? I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. It's gone. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
I would say that like, we're, as consultants, it's going to be nonstop problems no matter what, right?
Right.
Just hope for good problems.
Yeah.
There you go.
Do your best.
Or fun problems.
Wait,
fun
that goes
problems
against
are the
everything. Excellent. Well, gentlemen, I think it's time to say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.